Hey buddy, want to buy some watches? I got some nice ones here, real cheap. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Adventures with Time. On this channel, I chronicle my experiences in watch collecting, hoping to share with you and you share with us our collective experiences so we can all learn a bit more about this hobby. Today, I describe an experience that I have yet to have in watch collecting. As you know, if you've watched a few of my recent episodes, I have a couple of watches that I need to get rid of in my collection. First is my G-Shock Golfmaster. I bought this watch last summer after watching a lot of episodes that people posted around G-Shocks. People seem to love these watches. So I went out and got one, and I got a fairly high level one in that it has 4 sensors in it. But after wearing it for a week, I realized that these types of watches did not fit into my collecting objectives. So I wanted to sell it. The other watch is the Zelos Swordfish. I had discovered Zelos after attending the Worn and Wound wind-up show in New York City last fall. And I found Zelos and really liked their watches, especially the Swordfish, which was newly released. I purchased one in blue and was happy to have it in my collection. But about a month ago, Zelos came out with their Horizons GMT. And after looking at its specs and seeing a couple of videos on it, I really wanted to have this watch. And once it arrived, I realized how much I really do like it. But I realized that I can't keep everything. And although the Swordfish is a really nice watch with a great value proposition, I decided to let it go and look to sell it also. Hence the new experience for me in watch collecting. I have never sold a watch before. I've sold a lot of other things because I have other hobbies where I buy and sell, but never a watch. And I think selling a watch is very different than selling other sorts of collectibles. So I needed to figure out exactly what venue I was going to use to sell my watches. As is my approach in watch collecting, I watched a few videos on YouTube and really came across 4 possible avenues to sell my watch. I'm sure there's lots of other ways, but let's look at the 4 ways that I considered. One of the simplest ways to sell a watch is directly on YouTube. Of course, you have to have a YouTube account. If you do a search on YouTube for watches for sale or watch for sale, you'll see that a few YouTubers actually try to sell their watches on YouTube by making a video describing the watches they have for sale and listing the price. Of course, this is most effective if you have a following on YouTube. Otherwise, it might be hard for people to find your sales promotions. And you can see they post videos describing the watches, showing all the details, and listing the prices. People either contact the seller directly through an email or by commenting on the YouTube video. And of course, there are no sales commissions collected through YouTube. The buyer and seller, in this case, are working directly together. Now, another sales channel, which seems very popular, is through watch forums. I belong to Watch You Seek, and if you go into their forums, you'll see certainly forums on different watches, different brands, different topics. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a section called Sales Corner. Here, there are a couple of forums, one for dealers and one for private sellers. In the private sellers, you'll see that people usually list their watch. They'll preface it with FS, which is for sale. They'll describe the watch in the title. And then if you click on any of the postings, you'll see the details about the watch for sale. Usually they'll give condition, all the specs, the price they're asking, how much is for shipping, and of course, pictures, lots of pictures on the watch, either directly in the post or sometimes they'll post the pictures on another hosting platform and provide the link where you can see them. Communication with the seller is done through a private message, unless they provide an email, where you can ask questions or say you want to buy the watch. I find most sellers, if they're not dealers, will use PayPal to request payment. And again, as with YouTube, there's no sales commission by the forum. You're dealing directly seller to buyer. A third venue, which I've not used yet, is Reddit. Reddit has a lot of communities on it. One of them is called Watch Exchange, where people sell their watches. And here, instead of using FS for sale, they'll use WTS, which stands for Want to Sell. And just like in Watch You Seek, they'll post pictures of the watch for sale, leave a description, and how to contact them. One thing you'll notice is that every posting on Reddit gets a comment from this auto monitor who puts on rules and guidelines of posting anything in this community and caution that your post can be removed if you don't follow the rules. Sometimes this is the first comment or it's the second or third. I think it depends on how quickly somebody else will comment on it. And again here, there is no commission to sell your watch. It's strictly a transaction between the buyer and the seller. Now, the last method of selling a watch that we'll talk about today is through eBay. eBay is an online auction and selling site. And of course, they have a lot of categories, one of which is watches. One of the nice things about eBay, especially for watches, is that you can perform filtering on a lot of attributes: condition, model, size of watch, color of the band, movement, etc. And eBay is the middleman on any transactions, in that they make sure payment is made, items are shipped. They even have a feedback section so you can look at the good and bad reviews that different sellers have had. Now, eBay offers several types of listings. You can have a flat buy it now price. You can have an auction where you place a starting price and multiple people can bid up what they're willing to pay for that watch. There's also a best offer if you're willing to take an offer. And you can combine some of these options. For example, you can start a listing as an auction with a base price, and you can have a buy it now price, say 30% higher, if someone is really interested in scarfing up what you're selling. The downside of using eBay is that eBay takes a commission. They call it a settlement fee. For watches, that's usually 10%, which can be a significant amount if you're selling your watch with a very thin margin. Now, I've used eBay before for my numismatic hobby, and I'm quite familiar with it, both buying and selling. So I decided to use eBay as my method of selling. Having decided to use eBay to sell these watches, I needed to figure out what my starting offering price was. And that is, on eBay, what starting bid I would accept. I looked at all these sites that we had just talked about and looked at what people were offering for these watches in particular. I also wanted to see what people were actually selling them for, not what they were asking for them. And eBay was the only place which actually shows you the final sale price. So I looked on there to see what people were actually getting for these watches. So I set my starting price at some fair price where people were actually selling their watches for. I also set a buy it now price at about 35% above that, in case there was someone out there who was really looking for this watch and wanted to get it without risk of being bid up higher. As it turns out, I was able to sell both watches, but I didn't get a lot of bidding activity on them, basically around what my starting bid price was. But since I had set that price at something reasonable and something I was willing to accept, I was happy with how these auctions worked out. I don't know if I'd use eBay for all types of watches that I would sell. For example, a luxury watch, I'm not sure I'd go through eBay. But for middle and low price watches, I think it's a reasonable place to sell it. Now, eBay does charge a 10% settlement fee at the end of the auction. But I was lucky enough to hit one of their specials where they cut that in half. So I only had to pay 5% of the final price of the watch. And I was willing to accept that and thought that was a good deal. Since all the settlement activities are handled through eBay and PayPal, it really is an easy way for me to sell those watches. Please let me and other viewers know about your experiences with selling watches. What venue do you use? How do you price your watches? What pitfalls have you run into? And as always, please subscribe to this channel. Please hit that bell icon so you're notified when I post my next video. Please give this a thumbs up if you liked it. And most importantly, please make a comment below so that we can hear about your experiences and I can tell if you like this content. Until next time, thanks for watching.